Let's talk about the biggest storylines for Maryland football headed into week one.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is here, and it's also around the corner. So visit FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. Maryland football, let's talk about the biggest storylines headed into week one of the college football season for Maryland football. So I can't believe it's here. It kind of ran up on me, but it's time to talk some actual football, and it's time to talk some actual football games and no more of this and that. And we get to talk about an actual game for this weekend. Look out Thursday, Friday. I'm already working on it, pre-recording. With this kid, JJ from FAU, knows his stuff. Great listen to preview the FAU game on Thursday and Friday. So look out for that. So we'll have great preview show. Everything you want to know about FAU, JJ tells us. So we'll have that out on Thursday and Friday. I'm excited for that. But Monday through Wednesday, it'll be me talking Maryland football, what to expect, what are the biggest storylines, and what I'm kind of watching for in this game in the FAU. But it's nice to talk about an actual football game, and it's an interesting one, week one for Maryland football for sure. It's not like going to make the headlines for it's not an Ohio State versus Texas maybe quality game, or Clemson, LSU. But for us Maryland fans, this game is exciting, and there's a lot of different storylines that personally I'm going to be watching for that are going to be big for Maryland football. And I think it's a pretty easy thing to start it out with. And I'll also talk about this in the last segment. Who is our QB? I don't know. I don't know. It's because Mike Locksley hasn't had his press conference yet. I don't know what kind of the deal is. I'm expecting that to come out over the next day or so, because I thought he would tell us. I thought he said he would tell us before the game. So that's absolutely the biggest storyline. I think we're all expecting it to be Malik Washington. I've almost kind of anointed him the starter myself when I'm talking about Maryland football, just because of his recruiting and like who he is and the politics and some of his talent, and bringing a 4-star like Malik Washington into the talent, being a top 5 rated quarterback in that 2025 class, according to 247. I think a lot of people are expecting Malik to be our starter. And I think going into the season, that's our biggest storyline. Forget week one. I just think that's our biggest storyline headed into the season. I think there's a lot of people who are really excited to see Malik Washington. I think there's a lot of different perspective on Maryland football and how it can go. But there's one thing in common. A lot of people are high on Malik Washington and want to see what he can do in year one as a freshman for Maryland football. I think that's kind of what people are watching for. I think that's kind of the main point of interest for Maryland football, and from the outside kind of world and people that aren't only paying attention to Maryland football and watch a lot of different other teams, they want to watch this quarterback battle and watch Malik Washington and see how he ends up being as a 4-star level recruit. Mike Locksley hasn't had a guy like this. We like Talia. Talia was arguably one of the best Maryland QBs of all time. Like, you could argue him as being one of the best Maryland quarterbacks there is. Like, Talia was great for Maryland football, but I think everybody expects, including myself, that Malik Washington can take this team to a different level. And I think we're going to see it early on against FAU. I just think we're going to see his talent burst onto the scene right away. And that's absolutely the biggest storyline. And I think I'll talk a little bit more about this in the last segment, but I really think it goes two ways with the storyline. The storyline is a QB battle. Who's the quarterback? And technically, Mike Locksley hasn't named it yet. Between Malik and Justin Martin and Christian Martin, I think it's really a two-man race between Justin and Malik, and obviously Christian Martin had a really good spring game, but that's the storyline. Who walks out there for Maryland football first, I think is going to be a big thing. I think there's two ways that it can go, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But to me, that's the biggest storyline of the camp. That's been the biggest storyline is the quarterback battle for Maryland football. I think the next biggest storyline starts actually not with the player, but starts with Mike Locksley. Heading into this season for Maryland football, I think there's question marks surrounding Mike Locksley. I'm not sure exactly where to put him. A lot of people have asked me, okay, is he on the hot seat? Like, what's the deal with Mike Locksley? And I've had a couple different responses, but I do think headed into week one, headed into this year, after a very disappointing year last year, only getting one Big Ten win. Yeah, I was against USC, but one Big Ten win isn't good enough. But we have to remember that Mike Locksley did go to 3 straight bowl games and won 3 straight bowl games for Maryland football before last year. So I think it's totally fair for him to have a bad year, but you start to get into trouble when you start having a bad year on a bad year. So, okay, he had one bad year last year, but it's like if he puts together another bad year this year, I think that's a big storyline. It's like, what do we do with Mike Locksley in the future? And this year, I think it's a huge indicator on his career, on how it's going to go for Maryland football, because this Maryland football team's young. It's young with a lot of young talent when we talk about Malik Washington, but having a top 25 class in that 25 class, that's kind of a little bit confusing. A top 25 recruiting class in the class of 25. Definitely a little bit confusing, but there's a lot of young talent. If he puts together a bowl team this year, I think people are going to be really excited about Mike Locksley in the future. But if he doesn't, I think it's a big storyline that's like, okay, we like Mike Locksley. He's been good to us, but is he our head coach? And you wonder with the new AD and things like that, who didn't bring in Mike Locksley, is Mike Locksley going to be able to stay around another year if this year doesn't go the way we want it to go in terms of, I would say, making a bowl game, getting to 6 wins, I think is about, as a football team, I think that's kind of where we want to be. So I definitely think that's a big topic in college football in terms of the grander scheme of things, because I thought last year was a poor coach team. I don't know if it was the coordinators, Mike Locksley, a combination, the players, but something wasn't right, and they've admitted that. And going into this year, I just think it's a big temperature year for Mike Locksley. If he has another bad year, I think either could potentially get let go or his seat could be insanely hot headed into next year. So that's a big storyline for Maryland football is Mike Locksley. I think people have different opinions on that, but I definitely think that's something that we're all paying attention to. I think those are definitely the biggest headlines for Maryland football. And then I think another big storyline, my third big storyline that I wanted to talk about, I think is the construction of this team. I think Maryland football in the past has had, I feel like it's always been kind of solid in terms of bringing people up and feeling good about different players that we've kind of developed. But this year, we lost a lot of players from last year, whether it was the transfer portal and losing guys like Roman Hemby or Kellen Wyatt to Indiana, or Terez Davis to Ole Miss, or losing a bunch of other players in the transfer portal. You kind of look at this team a little bit differently, or losing guys through the draft like a Dante Trader or Ty Felton or Jordan Phillips or Tommy King Basote or Caden Prather. You look at this team different than I have in past years, where I've been like, there's always been like some players where you feel pretty good about. And now we brought in transfers and they've been part of what we do. But I don't think it's come close to kind of the turnover that we've had this year and the amount of new faces in either the freshman class or in the transfer portal. And I think that is a big storyline headed into this year. Obviously, the transfer portal in today's college football, it's a big part of college football. It's a huge part of it. If you can't get it right, you're probably not going to be a quality team. But I just don't think Maryland has had to deal with it to this degree yet. And we're kind of seeing that now with Maryland football having to really do something with a lot of roster turnover and a lot of new players at a lot of new key positions. When you really look up and down Maryland's roster, like when you think about it, like Malik Washington at quarterback, that's the biggest new guy. Obviously, we talked about him. We've talked about the receiver position. Maybe our best receiver on a roster, somebody new, and Jaleel Farouk. And then we also brought in a guy like Caleb Webb that we're expecting to have an impact. Left tackle, the most important person on the offensive line, and maybe the most important player to actually help Malik Washington succeed. Latrell Perry, we're expecting him to start. He's a transfer coming in. Dorian Fleming, who potentially could be our best weapon on the offensive side, a transfer coming in. On the defensive line, the interior defensive line, almost everyone that we expect to play besides one or two guys are transfers. Cam Rice, Joel Sterling, Ian Thomas, Cedric Smith, Bryce Jenkins, a freshman. A lot of different names. Pass rushers, Zahir Mathis. Sidney Stewart is a 2-for-7 freshman All-American. What's the deal there? Our two starting corners, Jamar Glasgow and Dante Joyner. So my point is, I haven't seen a Maryland team under Mike Locksley yet that has had this much turnover, and it's not necessarily bad because we have to remember last year's team wasn't good. So I'm not going to sit here and act like it's a bad or good thing, but it is a big storyline because it's a lot of new faces that Mike Locksley hasn't dealt with. I feel like he's gotten kind of used to developing, bringing up a lot of people, getting a transfer here or there at certain position groups, but not having as big of a transfer class as he did and not having as big of a freshman class as he did this year that are actually going to come in and make an impact. So it's an interesting kind of point because it's like, okay, how does he actually handle this? Has Maryland done enough in the offseason to get guys up to speed? Are we going to feel like a team that can work together, that's going to be able to have cohesion and the best type of leaders, like things like that? Because usually leaders are developed from guys that have been in the program. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely players that have been through the program, but I just think it's a little bit different this year. So I see those as the three biggest storylines heading into Maryland football. There's obviously a ton of other position battles and smaller things that are less intense that I could talk about. But to me, those are the main things that I think are important for Maryland football that I'm going to be watching and I think are really interesting. But yeah, so those are the big storylines. The quarterback, I think, is the biggest thing. Mike Locksley, and then how is the team in terms of the portal and all those different things that we use. I'm going to give you guys some light keys, just a quick preview for week one in terms of FAU and what kind of I hear their identity is. And I'll kind of talk about that next and how Maryland should fare up against that and counter. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra. Maybe you've been tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is the next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, in 15 minutes, effects can last up to 36 hours. So you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made this switch. It's online and and Rougiette connects you with board-certified doctors and ships e-treatment discreetly to your door. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. So head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege to get 50% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatments. Compound drugs are permitted to be prescribed and under federal laws, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information. So this is what I got from my talk with JJ at FAU, and we'll have a full preview. Just some basic things, because I didn't know anything about FAU. Like, I'm not over here over-researching FAU in the offseason, but talking with JJ Metz, and you guys will see he's a kid, but he knows his stuff. Like, I was, like, thoroughly impressed with JJ. But talking with JJ, I think there is some interesting parts of this FAU team. So there's a couple different things where I can see Maryland definitely having the advantage. It sounds like the secondary is not great for FAU. It sounds like the secondary is a question mark, and I was instantly like, bing, bing, bing. This is a good day. This potentially could be a good day for Maryland quarterbacks. Malik Washington, hopefully, we'll see exactly who it is to throw the football. Like, this is a game where we could really see some of the receivers put in work. Jaleel Farouk, Octavian Smith, obviously, but even some of those lower guys on the depth chart, like a Ryan Manning or Caleb Webb or Shalik Knott, some of those guys, I think could make big plays in this game. And I think throwing the football all over the place definitely could be a thing if we hold up in protection. So apparently their secondary is weak, which is really good to hear because I think our receiving room is going to really be able to get open down the field. And we'll see. I've liked the way Malik Washington has thrown the football down the field. I like some of the throws that he has made. So it's entirely possible that Malik has some big-time balls down the field. So definitely a position group that FAU sounds like they're not great at. And then somewhere that it sounds like is a strength is the way that JJ made it seem is they have a lot of different weapons. A lot of different guys in the receiving room, an interesting transfer quarterback from Western Kentucky that's supposed to be one of the better conferences or better QBs in FAU's conference this year, like supposed to be amongst the best guys, like could propose a really big challenge, a three-headed running back monster where they play a bunch of different guys. So, and the quarterbacks brought in some of his receivers came over from Western Kentucky to FAU. It's interesting because I think that our secondary is going to get tested, and I think our secondary is much better than FAU's. But I'm still like, okay, there's still holes in places. There's still question marks. We're still kind of like, who's the nickel going to be? Like, I couldn't tell you right now. There's names, but I couldn't tell you who it's going to be or who's going to walk on that field first. So that's something else that I'm going to be looking at. That's a storyline heading into this game that is going to be really interesting. And we're going to see Dante Joyner and Jamar Glasker, who have both been kind of talked about highly at different times. And there's been different things written about both of them. We're going to see how they look because it sounds like Western Kentucky's going to, or excuse me, FAU's quarterback from Western Kentucky had a really good year last year. It sounds like they're going to throw the football and do some stuff. So that'll be really interesting as well, I think. And then their defensive line apparently has a couple dudes up front that are going to be pretty good. So our offensive line instantly is going to face a good unit, and which is good. I don't want to walk out of that FAU game being like, okay, yeah, we won by 30 points, but they didn't test us in any ways. I'm hoping they make some plays. I'm hoping they do some things that test Maryland football a little bit, that they're a competitive team, because I don't want us to just walk out of this non-conference and we had to Wisconsin week one and it's like, shoot, we're not used to playing a team like this. We're not used to an environment like this. And we kind of get stunned in a way or surprised. So I'm hoping their dudes up front, if they really have some dudes like JJ was kind of saying, I'm hoping some of those guys actually really challenge Maryland's offensive line, because we like this, or I don't want to say we like this unit. We like this unit more than last year. I think a lot of people would agree with that. I don't think we're thinking it's going to be a great unit in terms of the Big Ten, but I do think it could be big if we can put together a good game on the offensive line, and kind of hopefully FAU can challenge us as well. So just some basic things that I heard throw out that I thought I would address, but we'll dive way more into it. It's going to be an interesting type of game. The line of the game keeps going down, so we'll see exactly what ends up happening. Let's talk a little bit more about the QBs, what I think could be interesting about the QBs headed into week one. We'll talk about that next. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race. You can choose a guy like maybe Jaden Daniels if you're a Commanders guy and believe Jaden Daniels can win MVP, or you can crown your champion in August or right now. So maybe your pick could be the Ravens if you're a Baltimore fan. I know we have a lot of those here to win the Super Bowl now. Or parlay your division winner or dark horses. Visit FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because future day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. So let's talk about the QB thing. So we haven't named the quarterback yet. I'm kind of waiting for the Locksley press conference, see what he says. But there is a way how I can see this guy. I could see him saying something like there's a couple different things that I think is happening. I think there's one way where it's going to be like, okay, Malik's the starter, and he go ahead and says it, and Malik's going to play basically the whole game against FAU. If it's somewhat competitive, like Malik's going to be in the whole game, like he's going to be your guy. There's really no question if or buts about that. Like I can 100% see that happening with Malik. That's probably the case scenario that I like the most, because you know what they say. If you have two quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback. And I don't want to mess around too early on in the season, especially a team like FAU. Like this FAU team could definitely beat us. If we played poorly, I think this isn't like some throwaway game. Like this is probably a hardest non-conference game. I don't know exactly what Northern Illinois, like haven't started looking at Northern Illinois or what the line was going to be when we play them. But FAU, there's a reason the line has continued to creep down and down. There's a reason for that, is because FAU's they're a good team, and people are thinking that they can be in the game, and Vegas has clearly flipped the line a little bit. So I don't want to do this thing where we're messing around playing too many guys. Like play your best guy, because they could beat us if we don't. But I think that's one. I think that's one possibility. I think that's a strong one. Malik's the starter. He's going to play basically the whole game unless we're blowing them out. Number two, I can see him saying something like, we'll kind of see on Saturday, like all three guys are going to play. I think that's definitely a possibility where he's like, we're still figuring it out. We're going to have all three guys play in the FAU game. So you're going to see Malik maybe go out there first, and then Justin Martin, and they're all going to get throws. They're all going to get chances to prove themselves out there in a real game. I'm just not a fan of that because, one, I don't care who our starter is. They're not going to get rhythm. Like, they're just not. You just don't I've never played quarterback, but I'm pretty sure coming in and out and playing two drives and another guy's two drives, another guy's two drives. Like, you never get a rhythm like that. And I feel like that's never beneficial. You've had all this practice time, and I'm sure you want to see guys in the game, but I just think it's better when people name a starter and kind of get on with it. So I think I can see that happening. Or maybe there's a number three, which I think is less likely. He names Malik the starter, but it says but Malik and Justin will both play, but say Malik will start the game. I think that's a possibility. And then there's also other possibilities, but I just don't see them happening. One is Justin Martin's the starter, but Malik will still play. I can see that happening, but I doubt it, to be completely honest. And then Christian Martin, really the only way I can see Christian Martin in that kind of conversation is him being like, Christian Martin and Justin Martin will see time. But again, I just think the best way to go about it for Maryland football is to play Malik. I just think that's the best way. And this game gets FAU's not just like we're going to blow them out by 40 points. It's not that type of game. They're decent. Like, they can beat us if we don't play well. And people over there, I've read something. They believe they can beat us. So I wouldn't mess around too much if I was this Maryland team, because that FAU team is going to try and to beat us. But that's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked On Terps.